All right, gonna make this video to talk about servicing these little KRW23 end loaders or articulating loaders or wheel loaders. I think coming across the pond they called them wheel loaders, so that's what we're gonna call it. This one has been upgraded a whole bunch, that's why I called it the Honey Badger, but this is still a guide for the KWR23 wheel loaders. Let's get into it. So I've got my covers off. Maybe you've seen the review video. This is not a review video. This is just how to service this thing to the best of my knowledge. Of course, grease all of your grease zerts. Some of mine fell out on its way here. So when you get one of these, go around and tighten all your grease zerts up. Not a big deal though. I am able to grease these fittings with this attachment here that I've modified slightly. So this is the attachment right here. It is for a compression type fitting. I think that's what they're called. Excavators have this compression type where you push this in to this little spring-loaded door, this tip right here, and then you're able to grease it. Excavators use this type of grease zert so that they don't get sheared off while it's being used. So this is the attachment that I use. I just wrap some electrical tape around the tip here, and then I'm able to get a good fit, and then I'm able to grease this without having a grease zert in it. So that's a good remedy if your grease zert has fallen out. I'm sure with some Googling you could find grease zerts, but I don't have time for that right now. I will probably do that in the future. So that covers greasing the boom and any other moving part. If it has a grease zert, grease it until it comes out the side. Unless it's a sealed bearing, then you'd be greasing it too much. You can see we've got some grease zerts down here. Now, some that are hiding from you and are kind of hard to see are those right down there at the tip of my finger. They're kind of hidden by shadow. You can see them there. Those are kind of hard to get to. Those kind of hid from me a little bit, so keep an eye out for those when you grease the boom and the scoop of this unit. Okay, we've discussed greasing the boom and the scoop and the articulating part. Again, if you see a grease zert, give it a few shots of grease. Now we're going to talk about the under the floor plate servicing. When you get a new one of these, you want to change all of the fluids. The 23 horsepower 2-piston engine takes about 1.5 quarts of 10W30 full synthetic. That's what I like to run in the engine. And the transmission right here, the gearbox, right where I'm shining the light on it, has a fill plug right there at the tip of my finger. You want to make sure there's no dirt on that when you fill it. Now, I opened it up and it was full of some clear stuff that had about the same consistency of 15W40 Rotella T. So that's what I put in there. And there was only about 2 quarts. And I always like to overfill things a little bit. Do this at your own risk. I have put a few hours on this since I've ran it. I haven't blown any seals out. But if you do put too much fluid into something, you do run that risk. However, I'm assuming that the Chinese are skimping a little bit, so I put in 2.5 quarts of 15W40 motor oil, and then 1/4 quart of Lucas oil stabilizer. The oil stabilizer gives the oil a little bit of stickiness, and it allows it to ride up on the gears. I don't know where I would get replacement parts for this, so I wanted to make sure it was lubricated. There's your fill plug for the transmission, and your drain plug is right down there at the tip of my finger. You can see it there. When it comes to servicing the differentials on the front and the back, again, I like to overfill things just a little bit. There was just under 1 liter that came out. It was the clear stuff as well, and it was about the same consistency as 15W40. So this is what I filled the transmission and the differentials with. On the differentials, I put about 1.5 quarts in. Like I said, it had just under 1 liter in it, and I like to overfill things, so I put 1.5 quarts in the differentials. Do this at your own risk. I'm not recommending this. I would put at least 1 quart in if you are going to change the fluids. and then add some engine oil stop leak and some oil stabilizer in on top of that. I like to overfill things, so with the oil stabilizer and the engine oil stop leak mixed into the oil, I put in 1.5 quarts. We will see if I blow out my seals. To get around this, because there is no vent on these differentials, I just hand tightened the fill plug. So if it does build up any pressure, it should vent out the top after it makes its way through the threads. Again, you don't have to overfill it like I did. Put at least 1 quart in these differentials. You can slay me in the comments if you'd like on the engine oil stop leak and the oil stabilizer, but because these are coming from China and parts are kind of hard to get for them, I want it to be lubricated. The oil stabilizer should help with that, and if any of the seals go out, hopefully the oil stop leak will help with that as well. So that covers changing the transmission fluid and the differential fluid and the engine oil. Now we are going to cover the grease fittings and the places that I like to spray some garage door lubricant on, just to keep them lubricated and water free. Believe it or not, these little drive shafts have a grease zert right here. Now that's on the other side. I would have to turn the engine on so you could see that. But both of these little drive shafts have a grease zert, so give that a few shots of grease. And then I was surprised to find out that the U-joints also have grease zerts. One of these I can't really get to for the life of me, so I oiled it up as best I could. Hopefully it has some grease in it. But the other two I was able to grease, so these U-joints on both of these little drive shafts have grease zerts, so get those greased up. Your hydraulic pump has a grease zert. Now you don't want to over grease that, so I only gave that 2 or 3 shots of grease. As far as the pivot points for the clutch and the brakes, I just spray those down with some garage door lubricant. I don't care if it attracts dust, it'll lubricate it a little bit, stop it from squeaking, maybe help with some wear. And then these right here are your shift cables. So those are for your high and low ranges. That actuates these arms on the transmission. I sprayed these down with garage door lubricant. I dripped in some 30 weight oil. Where these pins go down into the transmission, you can see that there's a little bit of slop in that bushing, so oil will get down there and help it pivot. I did that for both of those. And then I had an issue with mine coming out of forward gear in low range when I would go into a dirt pile or give it some unexpected throttle. So I actually drilled an 1/8 inch hole here and an 1/8 inch hole there and attached a screen door spring to it just to give it a little more holdover. It works pretty well. I haven't had it pop out of gear yet, and I've done a decent amount of work with this. Got some grip tape backing here. That's the adhesive backing. As far as lubricating this, you don't want to lubricate it too much because it can cause your clutch to slip. But I like to spray this little thrust bearing, spray this with some garage door lubricant, and then I also hold down on the clutch and get some in there as well. Again, there are grease zerts on those drive shafts, and there are grease zerts inside of the U-joints. And wrapping up, as far as these shifters go, you can see that it is somewhat fancy. It has one shaft that goes into another spline shaft, and then it goes through this detent box, and then it actuates these cables and it pulls the arms in or out. I sprayed this Max chain and cable lubricant up in here, and I get it up in there, and then I service this bearing a little bit. Now, one thing I did when I first got this, when I was trying to figure out why this was dropping out of gear, was trying to adjust my linkages, and I wanted to make sure that these weren't sticky, because I've heard that on the way over here they can get corroded on the inside and get a little sticky. So I drilled 2 very small holes. Now you have to be very careful. You don't want to go too deep or you will sever your cable and this won't work anymore. But I drilled 2 very small holes there, and that allows me to get some PB Blaster in there and just lubricate the shifter cables. That about wraps it up for servicing the working components on this. I haven't had to open up the wheel bearings. I do want to do that at some point, but I won't do that today. That's pretty standard. Put some wheel bearing grease on your wheel bearings, inspect your brakes, clean them, etc. You should be able to figure that out. But as far as changing the fluids, servicing under the floor plate, servicing the boom and the scoop, I think I've covered all of that. Grease all of the grease zerks that you can find. Surprisingly, there are some on those drive shafts, don't forget that. Lubricate everything as best you can. And as far as overfilling your transmission or your differentials, do that at your own risk. At least put in the same amount of fluid that came out. Catch it all in a pan and figure out how much came out of the gearbox and at least replace it with that much oil. You can overfill it like me, and I haven't blown out any seals yet. I'm just taking that chance, so do that at your own risk. This concludes the video for the servicing of the KRW23 AGT industrial wheel loader. Wanted to make this video because there's not a lot of information out there on these, and I think they're a pretty versatile and handy, affordable farm tractor that isn't 50 years old or doesn't cost $60,000. So follow for more. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and if you don't like what I've done here, feel free to eat me alive in the comments. That helps the algorithm. Goodbye.